You're listening to Elevate Your Paycheck, the podcast that is dedicated to transforming your financial journey. I'm Carolyn, your host and money coach that will guide you out of that paycheck to paycheck cycle and onto a path towards financial independence. Are you ready? Let's do this. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm Carolyn, your money coach. Now, today, I'm going to be talking directly to the parents on this podcast and the wannabe parents, the people that are thinking about having a family. This episode is going to be for you because we always want the best for our children. Sometimes that means the best clothes, the best schools, the best of everything, right? But do we think about providing them with the best financial knowledge? This is a real gap in our educational system. I know right now they're starting to develop curriculum around financial literacy. And I talked about it last week about my niece, being excited to learn about interest at school, which is fantastic. But, there's so much to be done, right? There's so much more learning that can be done and be taught in schools. But who is the best person to teach your child? And that would be you, right? You teach by example. You teach by what you do. They're watching everything that you do. And if you're not exhibiting good financial conduct, how do you think they're going to? If you tend to have, let's say, the avoidance mindset that we talked about last week, then it's likely that your kids are watching the way you avoid, and they are going to do the same. And I know that you don't want your kids to fall down the same path that you did because you didn't get that crucial information early on. And so today we're just going to dive into the things that we want to think about when we talk to our children about money. A lot of the time, we make the biggest mistake by really not involving them in financial decisions and discussions, right? We always say, oh, this is an adult conversation, Don't worry about it. When you get older, you'll understand, right? These are the things that I heard when I was growing. She's living on residence, she's living on her own, and she's starting to become more independent and make her own decisions and mistakes, right? And I can only wish that when she was much, much younger, that I had taught her some of these principles, the things like spending and saving and budgeting and understanding what it means to appreciate what money is. Now she's starting to learn, and I feel like I'm a little bit late, right, in teaching her, but that's why I'm so passionate about this, so you guys can do the same to your young children, that you can tell them the importance about learning and managing money. So how can we really do this? How can we teach our kids about money without giving away all of our financial situation? Now, this starts very young, right? So it can happen in the most casual of moments. So one would be in the grocery store when you're doing your grocery shopping. And if you have young children or teenage children, you're kind of explaining that I have X amount that I have to spend, and we're going to find some items that are for the dinner for the week and make it a game, right? Let's see if we can gather an amount of money and stick within a budget. So you want to make it fun, obviously, for children, right? You want to make it kind of exciting. How can we reach a certain goal? They have these fundraisers, right, that kids do at schools and things like that. And there's always this meter, right, and a meter board, and they can see the money kind of going up, and that creates the excitement. And they were like, Mom, we got to go and talk to 10 more people and sell more chocolates, right? And you're like, okay, but it's that excitement that you want to generate when they're talking about money and really incorporating that into their daily lives. Focus on one thing. I'm not trying to make sure that this is talked about at every conversation, but saving usually is the one thing that we focus on, right? Oh, you should save your money. They get Christmas money, or they get money for an allowance or whatever it is. And, you're telling your kids, oh, you should save your money. But they don't know why. They don't know what they're saving for. They don't know, why am I going to put it in this pot? What is the purpose of that? I want to use it right now. And so this is where the conversation about investing comes in, right? Not just saving it in a piggy bank, but putting that money to work and making it grow without you having to do anything. And there is where you're going to get the excitement, right? And that early talk about investing can change their course of life, if you think about it. At the age of 18, you can contribute to a TFSA. But imagine if that 10-year-old had been saving up money, and I'm not saying they have to save every penny, but if they were saving up money for 8 years up until the point of when they can put this into a TFSA and then aggressively invest that for over the course of 20 years, you can imagine the amount of money they would make on that. And so that's the kind of thinking that we want to teach our kids, not just about saving, but let's invest it. Let's see what we can do and allow the money to work for us in that regard. And then the next big component that you can tackle is spending. And this is where kids have a hard time because they see something, they want it. And you have to admit that we're not the same type of parents that our parents were, right? I think the generation before us, they were great savers and they really didn't spend a lot because they were building. For the most part, if you have immigrant parents that came to this country, their first generation, they were really concerned about building, right? They wanted to build a better future for their generations to come. The generations came along, so we came along, and we felt like we were deprived, right? We didn't get what we wanted. We had to work really hard doing chores or whatever it was, and maybe we felt like we were lacking. And so what's happened now is we're turning it around and we're making it so easy for our kids. And that is where we're kind of doing them a disservice. Because it's so easy, because they just say, hey, Mom, I want this, this, and this, and next thing you've turned up with it at home, they think, hey, what is the value of money? I have no idea. I just ask for it and it comes. And so we've kind of like flipped the script on it a bit. And I think it's backfiring on us a little bit because we're like, you guys don't understand how much we had to work. And, we kind of start sounding like our parents, right? So it's a whole really interesting environment that we're in right now. This is the time when you break that cycle where you really need to make the kids understand what it is to spend and how much they can spend and how to allocate that. And this comes back to making sure that they're involved in your personal finances, right? So explaining that this is how much I have to spend. And because a lot of times, the ATM back in the day, it used to be just this machine that spit out money. They had no idea that you had to earn it, you had to work for it, you had to invest it, you had to save it. They had no idea. And so explaining that to them on a very simple level that, you know what? I have $100 in my wallet and we're going to buy X, Y, and Z. How can we do this? And you just explain it in a very simple and understandable manner so that they in turn do the exact same thing. Because again, they're just following what you're doing. And that leads me to talk about planning. Creating a plan for your money is important for all of us. You want to obtain goals. I talk about that a lot. And in order to obtain those goals, you really need to plan for them. So involving your children about your family financial plan is important for him to hear that discussion. So let's say you're planning to buy a home and you're currently living in an apartment. Maybe kids are sharing rooms or whatever the story is. You want them to be involved in the process about thinking about what we need to do to actually buy our own home. And it's obviously going to require some sacrifice and putting money aside. And so when you explain to them, I have to save money because we're going to buy a house. Again, they're not really relating the two. So if you're planning on doing something like this, take them with you to see the new homes. Get them excited about having their own room. And then show them you going to the bank and actually putting that money that we've saved and putting it away. Even though everything can be done electronically, but the process of them seeing and watching you do something is really going to resonate. And that's what they're going to remember when they get older. And then there's earning money. Now, as parents, we want our kids to do well. We want them to succeed. It's just part of it, right? And so we hope that they get an education so that they will end up in a career path that will lead them to make more money than you did. That's kind of what we hope for. And so as they kind of venture out into this world of being an employee or even starting their own business, you want them to know that when the money comes in, this is what happens to it. It's funny, a lot of the times I talk to students and they see their first paycheck come from a summer job or something, and they're like, I don't understand why the government is taking away my money. And why do I have to pay taxes for this? And so it's just funny because, again, this is illiteracy, right? They don't know anything about taxes. What is that? What is it even for? Why are they just taking my money? I worked for it. And as much as probably we don't want to pay taxes either, we have to explain what the taxes are for, what it's doing for our community and our society, why they're taking away a portion, what's going to happen at the end of the year when we claim it back from the government. These are the kind of discussions that you want to have so that they understand you're working, but at the same time, there are things that are going to be coming off your paycheck. And after that happens, what are you going to do with the rest of it? Is it just there to spend? Or are you going to allocate different percentages to saving, to having a goal? Maybe you want to buy a car. All these things, these are the discussions that you really want to talk about and plan and help them to create their own plan, right? So they're watching you create the plan for your family. Now you want to be engaged and help them to create a plan for themselves. Now, to be honest, having casual conversations is great. And that's what I said when you're starting out with a young child. Casual conversations are perfect. But as they start to get a bit older, you get busy, they get busy with their sports and all these things, and you kind of have to set aside a time for this because it is an important part of them growing up. And so I talk about money dates, right, with your partner or a friend or whatever, to talk about your own personal situation. You almost need the same thing for your children, to set aside a time when you're just going to discuss money and have them ask questions, right? Have them ask, what is this? Or I saw somebody else do this. What does that really mean? What does an RSP mean? What does it mean to retire? And what are credit cards? How do they work? Why am I paying more if I don't pay it by a certain due date? These are a little bit more complex conversations, but as they get a bit older, you can introduce those kind of topics to them as well. The idea is we're trying to change the culture of your environment, of your family, and the next generation. We want them to feel that they can talk openly about money because many people didn't do that when they were growing up. They just had to figure it out. And that's where some of those mindsets come in, right? They come in from past experiences, which you may have watched your parents kind of go through and develop this mindset that maybe is not super healthy. So in order to change, in order to make a difference to your children, you need to make it in an environment that they understand what most of these terms are. They understand why you do the things you're doing. And you create this culture of being able to have an open discussion. One of the early episodes of this podcast, it's number 14, if you want to take a listen, I invited Vienna Summer onto my show. And she is an accountant and an expert in teaching kids, parents, how to budget. And so take a listen to that episode if you have young children. She had some really great ideas and suggestions on how you can incorporate these things into conversation. So why am I talking about all of this on Elevate Your Paycheck podcast? Is this really going to improve my personal situation? Well, I think it is. Because if your kids understand and they are involved in the family planning of what your money is going to be doing, it's going to be easier for you to kind of do the implementation part, right? If they have an understanding of why you're making the decisions you're making, then they won't give you a hard time, right? Maybe they will, but for the most part, they will have a better understanding of the why. So what does that mean for you? Well, it means that you also need to improve your financial literacy. You want to be able to teach your kids, but maybe if you don't have a solid foundation yourself, it might be a bit difficult. In the example of a budget, maybe you don't have a solid budget, or you've tried and failed, or you've tried these apps that are out there and you're not sure how it works. sometimes doing it for your kids is a lot easier than doing it for yourself. So learning the principles, understanding them so that you can go ahead and teach them a better way. I remember when my kids were young and we would take them to swimming lessons. Now, it's funny because my mom took me to swimming lessons and I didn't become a lifeguard or anything, but I love the water and I know how to swim, and I went up in the levels, and so I wasn't afraid of the water at all. But when they're very young, like parent and taught, you have to kind of go in the water with them. And so I take the kid in and I'd be having fun, and I'd see these parents on the side like really quite scared about going into the water. And the kid's dying to get into the water, right? Or not. Some of the babies are screaming as well. But it's like this battle, because that fear is holding them back from doing something that they know the child is going to benefit from. But they have their swim trunks on, they have their bathing suits on, and they're ready to get over their fear and do it because they know that it's going to be better for their children to understand and learn how to swim. And this is exactly what I am trying to say as well. It is scary. It is hard sometimes, creating financial discipline. But if you can use your children as your goal, that, they are not going to go through the same mistakes, that is going to make your learning so much easier. So the key is don't wait, right? Take action. Make sure that you have your financial situation under control. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? We all take one step forward, two steps back sometimes, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want to make some progress. So if you have debt that's hanging over your head, if you don't have anything invested and are not preparing for a rainy day like an emergency savings fund, if you don't have retirement savings that's going to help you and your family when you are finished working, these are the things that you kind of want to tackle. You want to tackle and make sure that you have these things under control and in line so that you can go ahead and tell your kids this is what you need to do, and you need to prepare at a very young age. So if you have already downloaded one of my guides, I have one on budgeting and I have another one on paying off debt. Start there. Take the guide and pick out one principle and start having these early discussions with your children. If you have questions about it and you don't understand it yourself, then reach out to me. I'm happy to kind of lead the conversation, right? And introduce this topic to your family and create those family sessions so that you can all have this discussion and make it a culture within your family that money is not something that we need to hide or feel ashamed or feel embarrassed that we didn't understand or manage it better. So I hope this episode was a helpful one for you. I will put the links to the guides in my show notes. But if you want to head to thefinancialmoment.com/debt trap, that is the guide for understanding how to pay off debt. And the second one is thefinancialmoment.com/budget-tips. So start by using that as a tool to have family discussions and make a difference in your personal environment. All right, have a great week, and I will see you again next week, same time and same place. Thanks for listening to the Elevate Your Paycheck podcast. If you love this episode and need deeper support, head to thefinancialmoment.com/support to see how we can support you no matter where you are at today. We help our clients organize their finances, create savings, eliminate debt, and create a roadmap to their financial goals, which makes them more in control than they ever dreamed possible. So head to thefinancialmoment.com/support and make this the next step in your financial journey.